Welcome everyone to our Office 365 and Teams training session around managers, how to structure your virtual department meetings in Microsoft Teams. My name is Nathan Austin, and I'm one of the founders, and VP of Business Development is my official title at Mitek. My primary job is to help clients and organizations use technology better. So today is one of the favorite things that I get to do with organizations, and it's a huge part of our mission at Mitek, which is to grow, help, and make a difference. So we hope that all of you can get some benefit from this and share it with any organization who may be trying to work virtually in a better way that you feel might be appropriate or applicable. But with that said, let's get moving. Here we go. So virtual department meeting topics. The first thing I want to make sure that we touch on is that this is a how-to session. I'm going to be very prescriptive about how to set up some of these components and pieces that'll help you run department meetings virtually. So this is not going to be more of an operational session. We have other sessions that we are intending on helping with some of the personal aspects of this, like if you're an individual trying to manage your accountability and your tasks versus a team. Additionally, we have a session that's next Tuesday in the future that's going to be more around running the actual meeting. So this is the structure of how to. So as you, and I'm sure you'll have questions throughout the session, there's a Q&A panel on the side of your screen. Please use that throughout the session because all attendees are muted. And by the way, this is being recorded. And we will either answer the questions online in real time, or if it's applicable, we'll wait to the end of the session and do a Q&A at the end, okay? But in the meantime, for this session, I'm just gonna run ahead and kind of make it as a how-to. So the next part is from the agenda. We're going to do an overview of common department meeting objectives, you know, when you're trying to run a virtual meeting or a department meeting. I'm actually going to build out the virtual session and the virtual structure for you, and you'll be able to follow along with that. And finally, we're going to have some Q&A and some recommended action items for everyone to take to help drive some adoption of this in your organization. Okay, with that said, I want to tell you just a little bit about Mitek. This session is not about Mitek, but one of the things that we like to share for those of you who might not know who we are, you know, we are a business and technology consulting practice. They only work with small and medium businesses, around 15 to 500 people. The important thing that we try and do is help organizations remove IT challenges. This session is a great example of how we try and operate. We have much bigger problems to work on and solve in our organizations today than trying to figure out a tool that might help us better. So our goal is if we can help you use the tool better, that frees you up so you can spend more time solving the issues that we're all facing today in this very interesting and challenging time. The last couple things here real quick is that our goal for our team is that for our clients is to make IT easy for them. This is also an example of what we're trying to do is to make this easy for you, being prescriptive, giving you how-tos and tutorials. And through that, and by collaborating with our clients, we know that we can help our clients achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. That's it about Mitek. I just want to make sure that people don't think we're just a training company. We do this to enhance the way clients and small businesses use these tools to hopefully benefit their organizations and help them fulfill their mission better. All right, enough about Mitek. Let's dig into the overview of common virtual department meeting objectives. So over the past couple years, Mitek has been hosting multiple sessions a month on helping clients and helping organizations learn how to use Teams and Office 365 better. Many small businesses are already subscribing to Office 365, and they don't even realize some of the tools that are available to them today. So that's part of this session. And the other thing that's been a very interesting, it shouldn't have been as surprising as it was, but no matter the size of the organization, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever the organization industry, whatever they're in, if they're in a manufacturing industry, a professional services industry, a medical industry, 80% of the time, we all struggle with the same communication and collaboration challenges. We all have the same problems. Now we have different nuances relative to our industry and our organization, but effectively we all have the same communication and collaboration challenges. So that's why I feel confident that we can be prescriptive and you can just tweak some of the feature sets as far as what can be more applicable to you. Okay. The other thing that I'd like to note relative to building out this department structure is if anyone listening or participating leverages Traction or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, commonly referred to as EOS, this structure aligns very well with that. Actually, it fits very well, and you can tweak it to more specifically address items if you want to do that. But it's a good department meeting overview and how to structure that, and it aligns very well with EOS if that's something that your organization is doing. Okay. That said, here are some of the common areas, and this is what we're going to use as our guide today as we build out this structure. A lot of times I like to go and do a discovery. If this was a live session where we had more interaction, if this was like an in-person session, I would do some more specific interaction to saying, what problems, communication and collaboration wise, are you having with your team, and how can we solve those specifically? But due to the time that we have available to us, I'm just going to charge ahead with knowing, again, these are 80% of the time, these are the problems that we see organizations having relative to trying to run their department meetings. So first and foremost, since we are talking about a virtual department meeting, we're going to show you a couple ways in which to set up the video and audio collaboration. It's pretty easy, but it can be confusing because there's multiple ways to do it. Secondly, just showing have a meeting agenda. Where is that posted? Keeping track of meeting minutes and notes. I know many of you thinking, and I'd like all of you to virtually raise your hand or pause for a second. How often do you have someone taking meeting notes or meeting minutes and you email out the meeting notes, and so someone has those somewhere, but you don't have a good historical reference of those unless you go back and filter through your emails over weeks or months. So we're going to show you a way to consolidate that as far as the consistent meeting agenda, as well as regular meeting notes in a centralized place for that. How to centralize your issue and discussion list. As far as being able to communicate, when people have issues they want to talk about, how many of you have been in a meeting and you say, all right, does anyone have anything they want to talk about? And someone scratches their head and they're like, oh, there was that thing last week or earlier this week. I can't remember. Well, this is a way where you can avoid that, and you can coach your team and train your team to, whenever that item comes up in the moment, put it to the list, add it to the list, and that's something that you can just pull up whenever you go through your meeting. So we'll show you how to track that, how to create and track that, as well as action items. You might have a discussion that comes out, you talk about an issue that your organization or your team is facing, and you say, all right, hey, who's going to take the action on this? So not only you want to define the action, when is it due? Who's going to be responsible for it? And how do you have accountability around that has its visibility and accountability around just action items and to-dos? So we'll show you how to do that really easily in Office 365. There's also a place where you can share team documents, so that if there are production templates or documents that your team uses, there's a place to be able to store and collaborate on those. And finally, this last one is kind of a bonus item as far as rating the meeting for continual improvement. That is, when I referenced entrepreneurial operating system earlier, that is a common method for EOS to help you continually improve your meeting. So we'll show you how you can do that as well. All right, enough talk. Let's actually dig in and build out the meeting structure. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of the PowerPoint and I'm going to switch over to Teams. We have a very basic, we built out a demonstration tenant in Teams. And I wanted to start with a basic overview of a structure. I'm not going to get super deep into Teams because we could spend the rest of our time just talking about some of the features, the different capabilities just of Teams outside of running a department meeting. But you see the structure that we did here. So we're in the Teams tab, or the Teams section of Teams. And I always like to thank Microsoft for naming the application the same thing as a subset of the application. So here we are in Teams, talking about the Teams tab of Teams for our team. Yes, thank you. But the idea is that very common structure is you have an all team for your whole organization. And most organizations, with some semblance where they have marketing, sales, operations or production, finance, and then very often you have cross-functional teams. So we just built out this tenant as a way to illustrate that. For the sake of this demonstration and for structure, I'm going to focus our time and energy really on the operations team, as if we all on this call and all listening in are part of the operations team. All right. So to start, if we're hosting a meeting, how might we do that? So many of you are used to sending out recurring calendar invites. That's definitely something you can do. So at the very bottom, when you're on your operations team, the general channel is the default channel that's created anytime you have a team. And you're on the posts tab. Down here at the bottom, you see a bunch of little icons. And one of the things I'll illustrate is this little one that looks like a camera. It says Meet Now. It's a little bit of a misnomer because when you click on it, it's going to pop up this window that allows you to say, well, do you want to meet now or do you want to schedule that? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to show, I want to add a subject. This is oftentimes something that's missing, is this is our weekly virtual team meeting. All right, so then I can say schedule meeting. It's going to pop up this schedule option. One of the things that I like to note is that it automatically defaults to, it automatically captures that where is this going to be held? Oh, it's going to be in the operations team general channel. So by creating that right inside of there, so you could be scheduling this as far as, hey, our meeting's 1:30 to 2 o'clock every week or whatever that schedule might be. So let's say you meet Monday mornings at 8 a.m. right? And that's an hour-long meeting, so I'm going to schedule it for an hour. But the other thing is it's recurrence. Now, this doesn't have all the feature sets of how Outlook can set recurring meetings, so you might not want to use this feature. But for example, I can say I just want this to repeat weekly. So now it says occurs every morning, Monday morning, starting 3:30, moving forward. And you could, if you need to, you can also reserve. Some of you have. Today you're meeting virtually for the most part, but sometimes you might want to book a conference room, so you can do that as well. So when you do that, you can just hit send, and that'll actually schedule the meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. So now we've scheduled a meeting, and it posts here in the tab, virtual team meeting. The other place I'll show you, for example, where that shows up, I'm going to go to the calendar function over here. One of the things you'll see this. We're in the middle of our team structure right here. I'm going to go to next week, and now we should have our virtual team meeting scheduled, and this is something that'll also sync and integrate with Outlook, so it automatically will send an email to your team and also send an Outlook calendar invite that'll pop on their calendar. So if I click this, it automatically has the link, and I can join the team meeting that way. So that's one of the ways in which you can start and join a team meeting. I'm not going to do that because I'm also we're hosting this meeting in Teams, so I'm not going to create or host two meetings at the same time. So I'm going to close out of that. However, the other way to do it, as I mentioned in Teams, if you click on this, you could just say, if everyone knows when your weekly team meeting is scheduled, you can just say, hey, we meet in the general channel, and we could say this is our weekly team meeting, right? And I could say for March 26th, 2020, and then I could just click meet now, and that starts the meeting as well. All right, so that's a couple ways just to get started. I found that folks get confused about that. So this is a quick and easy way to say, hey, we're meeting in the general channel, and this is how we can meet now. So I'm not going to do that because we're already in it. But that's the first step that we wanted to take as far as setting up the video and audio collaboration. Once that happens, once you start the meeting, the team just pops up and it says, hey, do you want to join now? So there's a quick one link that you can click to join. The other thing is you're on mobile. If someone happens to be not in front of their laptop or desktop and they want to connect via their cell phone, they could also join the audio and video via their cell phone if they have the Teams application installed. So it's very easy to connect and start your team meeting to be able to host it virtually. All right, again, we're moving fast, but now we have we've started our team meeting. We have actually gotten all of our team joined. So everyone right now is joined, and I'm sharing my screen via the team channel, via the team. So this is what everyone's seeing, again, because we're meeting virtually, if you remember. So I'm gonna now go to, well, what about meeting minutes? So that by default, if you create a team, these tabs that you're gonna see at the top always default to posts, files, and wiki. So many people wonder, well, what is a wiki? Well, I'm going to click in the wiki. I set up a little bit of a structure here. So I built out like a team meeting an agenda, right? So one of the things that I recommend doing, because you can have multiple wiki tabs, but I'm going to actually go up here, click on this little drop down, and I'm going to rename this. So it's really easy. Click on the drop down, click rename, and say this is going to be our meeting agenda and notes. So now that tab at the top is named Meeting Agenda and Notes, so it's a little bit more intuitive for your team. And so you can click on that, and now we have the regular meeting. So what I do in my team meetings and what I would recommend from a structure perspective, notice the wiki has a little add new section here. So you have to hover over it, just click on that. What I typically do is I'll say this is the weekly, or I'll start by saying this is March 26th, 2020 weekly meeting. Now I already have the agenda. The standing agenda is already noted up here. So I actually come down here and I just copy and paste, and this is how I start my meeting. All right, team, what are your personal and professional bests? Or what are some of your wins and losses from the previous week? What are some of the lessons we learned in the last week? You know, put the notes here. Great. Another note there. Okay, so now you're creating a meeting repository. Notice now, once I created this additional section, over here, it automatically starts building out a kind of a structure or a repository. So as you go along, you'll have all your historical meeting notes down on the side. And if you want to get rid of this section over here, you can click on the little hamburger icon over here. This is what we call the hamburger icon. We like to use food nomenclature relative to that. So I'm going to click on that to close it. And so now I can put these notes. Hey, are there any clients or escalations, any things that we need to like make sure we communicate with the team? You know, this problem exists. Please create awareness. Right, so that way you can make your team aware of it. Another variable that you can get into is metrics and goals. So you might have specific metrics that you might want to list on here. So for instance, in the standard meeting agenda, I'm going to switch back to the standard meeting agenda. So for example, if you had specific metrics like saying widgets produced last week might be a metric. New prospects identified, right? Things like that. So this might be something that you want to track on a regular basis. You could use Power BI or some other dashboarding tools. Because of the time that we have available, I'm not going to get into that today, but that's just an example of one of the ways you can build a standing agenda. Okay, so now that you've gone through the metrics and goals here, and we've gone through the wiki, one of the things that I want to do is go to the next item of the agenda and say, well, let's look at action items. So, because I want to look at what past action items have existed. So I'm going to show you how to use and create. So one of the things that people don't know about Teams is you see this little add tab icon up here. So you can click on add tab. I'm going to use, these are all the different integrations that you can do. I'm going to click very specifically on Planner. So Planner is starting to load, and what it gives me the option of creating a new plan. So if you are creating this structure out from scratch, I would select this, name your plan, and go ahead and add it. I've already, for the sake of this demonstration, already created a plan. So I use this exact method to do it, but I'm going to use an existing plan just to show you how you can add it. I've already created a plan called Action Items and To-Dos. Click Save. And it's going to post to the channel that this is happening. So now I've got a simple and easy to do. So I'm going to review, according to our agenda, I'm going to review our action items. Hey, Gerald, he was assigned to get this task done by today, and there are 2 subtasks associated with this item. So if Gerald was in the meeting, I could say, hey, Gerald, how are you doing on this? Did you get it done? And he's like, oh, I got this one done, but I wasn't able to get the other one done. Here's what's going on. So one of the things we can do is say, Gerald completed 1 task, but is waiting to hear back from distribution. That's the item. So I can click send. Now I have a historic repository of what's going on, and this lets everybody know. This is also something that Gerald could have done outside of the meeting. He wouldn't have to wait in the meeting to get this done, but that's something that he could have captured and send a note to the team because maybe Gerald wasn't going to be a part of this meeting. He was going to miss it. The other thing we do is say, hey, Gerald, since you're waiting to hear back, can we just push this due date out to next week? Okay, great. I'm going to change that to next week. Hit close. Now that's going to update to next week. So I don't have any other action items, but if you want to add a task, if for instance, if you wanted to add a conversation, you could say, what's this task? This new task or to do. I can set the due date for next week when our meeting is, and I can choose who to assign it to. Right now, I've only got a couple people in this tenant, so I'm going to assign it to myself and nobody else, and then I'm just going to click add task. How many of you have ever had a task or to-do assigned to you? And this isn't very descriptive. So I come to next week and we're in the meeting and we say, hey, Nate, did you get this new task or to-do done? And I'm scratching my head going, I don't remember what this is about. So if you click into the task, you can actually assign additional details about this item to be completed. Right? And once I start typing, notice I can also, this little option here, so show it on card. So this is one of the things you can do. And notice it also pops up over here as an additional descriptor of this to do. You can also add sub items like I demonstrated in the previous one. Add, sub item number 1, sub item number 2. So for example, these can exist. I also have the show on card here, but I can only either choose to show this description or these sub items. Whichever works. You can add attachments, you can assign different priority, etc. So basically this is a way that you can keep track of action items or to-dos. As a little side bonus, sometimes it's covered, especially if you use EOS or the entrepreneurial operating system, you might go through and have quarterly rocks or quarterly initiatives. So you can also have a separate bucket or a section where this is a quarterly initiative. It's not due till the end of Q2 or in June, but this is an option that I can build out, have group visibility so everyone sees what's there, they see when it's due, they see my progress, and then I can also check in that on my weekly basis and say, hey Nate, are you on track or off track on your quarterly initiative? And this is one of the ways in which we can create visibility there too. All right. Again, I know I'm moving fast and you can play with this. There's lots of different options that you can play with here. There's also different ways that you can filter and schedule. You can group by bucket, who things are assigned to, whether or not they're in progress, due date, etc. So there's different ways that you can filter and use this information. And we're also going to talk about if you have to-dos assigned to you or tasks assigned to you, how you as an individual can manage, but that's a session that's coming next week. But this right now is a way for your team to have group visibility, and thus it helps increase group accountability to completing to-dos and tasks on time. All right, so now we've covered meeting minutes and agenda, and we've talked about action items. So I'm going to go back to our agenda really quick, and I realized, so we've talked about our action items. Gerald didn't get his completed, he got it partially complete. Cascading messages, if you have any of those that you need to share, you can note that, like, hey, the governor declared stay at home. Of course, spelling when you're in a live session, of course, is going to be incorrect. So we hit that, we can communicate that message, and then we can move on to issues and discussions. So one of the things that I recommend for issues and discussions, I've had people use the planner for keeping track of issues and discussions, but I've tried that. I found that I like using something a little different, is a SharePoint list. So I'm going to go back to the Add tab, and for the sake of this conversation, I already built out something. So when you click SharePoint, you can link to SharePoint repositories. Notice when you click that, it gives you the option to link pages or lists. So I'm going to choose a list. I actually already made this issues and discussion list, so I'm going to click save. That is now going to add my issue discussion list to the tab, and I've added an item here to discuss, and this is also where people can add additional items. So I'm going to click a new item saying, what about toilet paper? And I'm going to choose who owns this issue. Well, I'm going to make sure that Gerald owns that issue, submitted today, it's an open issue, great. So now I've added that. So this is an issue, this is very easy to be able to add an issue. Anyone on your team would be able to go and add this item here, and then we can go through and discuss it. One of the things I like to illustrate how you can add columns and feature sets here, the reason why I like to illustrate that is because should we have additional monitors, similar to the to-do issue, is that what does that mean? So this doesn't give me a lot of descriptive information. So what I can do is I can actually choose to add an additional column that's multiple lines of text. And this is just an illustration of what you can do. All of these columns, by the way, were also customized and I built them out. But I can say this is a longer description. And I want this to be multiple lines of text. I do not want a default value. One of the things I do want to do is I want to make sure that this information, I do not care that this column has information. So I'm going to make sure that's no. And then I'm going to click save. So now I've got an option to do a longer description. I'm going to do a quick edit on that. Notice the edit tab up here at the top. So I can say in the longer description, I can say I would like to explore having multiple monitors at home so I can be as productive productivity. So I can be as productive at home as the office. All right, so I'm going to keep that simple. So now that gives everyone a better understanding. Click save down at the bottom, gives me a little bit longer description to remember what it is. The other thing to do, all right, so now we've talked about this, and we can say, well, gosh, what's the status of this item? I'm going to click edit again. I might actually drop this. This item is now complete. And I'm going to click save. So now we've discussed this. Now, why is that important? Because one of the things you can do with this is you can actually then, there's a little filter icon over here. So when you start this session, as you get to this item on your agenda, you can just open the filter pane and saying, hey, I actually want to only look at open items, or I want to look at anything that's been submitted by myself or Gerald. So right now I'm going to click open. So now it filters automatically by open items. And how many times have you maybe had a conversation come up to say, well, gosh, I thought we talked about that. Well, let's go to the filter, and instead of looking at open items, I want to look at completed items. Okay, yeah, we did talk about that. We talked about that on the 26th. So those are some things that you can do. I've also had people add a column that says, here's the result of the conversation. So instead of just saying, yep, we talked about this, adding a column that might say, for instance, you might say multiple lines of text, conclusion of discussion, right? And you could say multiple lines of text. I don't want to require this. I'm going to click save. So then what I could do, if I go into a quick edit here, I could say that, shoot, I'm going to get out of the filter here for a second. I'm going to exit quick edit. Sorry about that. I want to edit this screen. I want to go down here. The conclusion of the discussion is we agreed to bring our existing monitors home. Great. So now we actually have a record of what we did, that this was an issue that was brought up, when it was brought up, it's completed, what the longer description is, and that we agreed and what we concluded in the conversation. So that way we don't have to rehash issues, because I'm sure that if you've been in teams long enough, you've been in the position where you've had to rehash issues. Okay, so that now we've been able to go into Teams. I'm going to go back to our agenda again. So in our agenda, we talked about issues and discussions. We talked about that hopefully for a good amount of time. I'm going to really quick show you that one of the things that when you create, when you rate the meeting, this is an EOS item, is a thought about continual improvement. So I'm going to go to add a tab. One of the tabs you have available to you is forms. Now, for the sake of the demonstration, I've already added a form. So you could create a form right here. I'm going to add an existing form. I'm going to add rate the department meeting. And my option is, once I've created this, I'm saying, do I want to collect responses or show the results? So I want to choose collect responses. Click save. And this is an item where you can say, hey, team member 1, so say this is Nate, how do you think the meeting went? Well, I'm going to rate it a 7. Team member 2, I'm going to rate it a 9. All right, well, what could we have done to improve this meeting? We could have stayed on topic better. Or we spent too much time discussing, issue A or whatever. So then you can submit, and this is something you can keep track over time. So it's a quick way for you as your team to be able to continually improve. So creating those forms, I created those, are really easy. It didn't take very long to do it. I'd be happy to share that more in the Q&A afterwards, but I wanted to just show it's a quick way to start with having an agenda, meeting notes, having action items immediately available to you, having issues and discussion items available, rate the meeting, and finally, I'll share in the file section, I've actually posted this document, which is the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to click on that, and you can see how I can also then collaborate on this document right inside of Teams. So if this was a team document that you wanted to work on with your team, of course, Microsoft's going to do that. You could actually have this and collaborate, whether Word document, Excel spreadsheet, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go back to the actual PowerPoint, not the inside of Teams. But I want to hit on some recommended next actions. We want to be respectful of everyone's time and get this covered in 30 minutes. So here's what we'd recommend, what we've seen be successful in other organizations. Identify the key problems you're trying to solve. The reason why we ask the question in that way or suggest it in that way is that the more clear you are on the problem you're trying to solve, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to identify which way inside of Office 365 will help you solve that problem the best. So be clear on the problem you're trying to solve. Take some of the recommendations from the prescription there, but start there. Right now, what I'd recommend you do is write down 1 to 5 takeaways that you want to implement for your virtual department meetings. It could also be installing the mobile apps on your phone, for example. You can install Teams on your phone and OneDrive or other SharePoint. There's different apps you can install on your phone, but write those 1 to 5 things down now that you want to implement for your virtual department meetings. And finally, or not finally, and the next one is take some baby steps. Like try and pick one of those things and do in the next 24 to 48 hours because we have additional sessions coming up tomorrow and basically every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday through the end of April in order for us to cover these sessions and have open Q&A and to help you drive adoption with your team. But start small. It's okay. You can make changes. It's not permanent. It's not a big deal. So I wanted to make sure that, but these are the action items that we would recommend you take. And please join us for the open forum sessions. And we will be sending up a follow-up email that'll have information about those additional sessions as well as on our website. Okay, I've now gone 1 minute over. So I want to say thank you everyone for attending our session live today. Really appreciate that. And for those of you listening in the future, thank you so much. And we will sign off.